All right, so we are back for the next installment of Asks, and I'm just going to jump right in. Hi, I want to ask you and your team how you believe in symbolism. I'm not sure exactly what you mean by this, like, how did we start believing in it, or how do we know what it is? You're going to have to clarify that one for me a little bit. I have been big on symbolism for my whole life. I'm an author myself, and so I kind of see words more than I see images, and so I can just read symbolism really easily. To me, it's really obvious, but I'm not sure if that's what you're asking. So if you want to clarify, you can send something back in. Have you heard about this? So this is, I went to the link, and it is talking about how there's going to be this big name drop, supposedly, in episode 5. So I have talked about this a little bit. We don't know what it'll be, but several of the reviewers said that there was going to be an almost name drop that was going to break the internet. So we don't know what that is, but what I'm hoping is that he will be talking about having romantic feelings for someone, and he will mention Beth. Now, they say it's an almost name drop, so I don't think we're actually going to hear her name, but maybe he alludes to her in some way, or he almost says it. I don't know. Of course, the Carolers think he's going to say Carol, and I don't think that will be the case. I really hope that it has something to do with Beth, but we just don't know. So we're going to wait till episode 5, which is supposed to be the best episode of the season, and see what it brings us. After watching your analysis on episode 1, I'm surprised you didn't mention and or pick up on how Jeanette is to Dawn. I don't know if it's just me, but I definitely noticed it. She has dark hair, low down, even looks kind of similar to Dawn. She's in a position of power, which is further shown through her body language and dialogue, standing and acting similarly to Dawn. She has a doctor working for her like Edwards. She literally screams Dawn. What do you think of this? Yeah, we actually did notice this. You're right that I never talked about it on the account. So for those of you who might be lost, it was just really quick. It was one scene at the end of the first episode where we see the boat that Daryl apparently jumped off of. And there's a French woman with dark hair. Her name is Jeanette. And she definitely does give off Dawn vibes. I will give you that. It's really great, a parallel that you picked up on, that she has a doctor working for her who even may be a research doctor. So yeah, we're definitely getting Grady vibes from that. And yeah, I think I don't have a whole lot more to say about it. We don't know who this organization is, this French organization. But I'm assuming that we'll learn as we go along. And I definitely think that it's going to have parallels to Grady. So it would be really great if Beth were somewhere in this organization. We haven't really seen a whole lot of evidence for that or anything. But yeah, I don't have a whole lot to add. I think you laid it out really well. Keep in mind the boat symbolism and the sea symbolism, the water symbolism is all stuff that we've seen around Beth. And this woman is now on a ship acting like Dawn, and she has a doctor working for her. So yeah, I think that that's really, really significant. It was just such a small part of the episode, and it's really hard to know where it's going until we see more. So I'm looking forward to seeing more and seeing how this is going to unfold. So yeah, thank you for that. Okay, next one. I'm rewatching the whole show. Wow. That's quite the undertaking. I've done that before, and it takes a long time. And I just realized in Still, there are 2 bra shots in one episode. Just funny to me. Beth changing off screen into a new outfit. The entire Alone episode is just domesticity. They were shot so intimately, and so was everything around them. Yeah, I agree. I have to laugh. I never notice bra shots, and everybody else notices Beth's bra more than I do. But I think that's great. But yeah, I agree about Alone. It was very much supposed to feel like they were a married couple in a new relationship playing house somewhere. Like, that really was what it was supposed to feel like. And I think emotionally that is what they were doing. So yeah, I really like that. And thanks for pointing out the bra shots. We all appreciate that. I'm sure Daryl appreciated it too. Okay, next one. What do you think is the significance of the St. Ignatius Hospital card that Beth picks out of a wallet and stares at in Slabtown? Oh man, I've not gone over this in a while. I'm not going to remember all of it. So it is the card that had it was Trevitt's card, and so it's how Beth figured out that Trevitt was a doctor from another hospital. Now, the Ignatius symbolism we have gone over a few times. You can look up St. Ignatius of, I think it's Loyola. He was a Catholic saint, which is why the hospital was named after him. There were a couple of things. You know what? I think I'm going to go look it up real fast because I do not remember. He was a saint who, I mean, just the fact that he's a religious figure is a big deal. But, okay. So one of the things is that, and this is something that we've come up more recently, it was kind of a big deal in his life. So it was something that was reported on where he hurt his right leg really, really badly. He was hit by a cannonball and fractured his right leg and damaged his left. And it's just pointed to as a really significant event in his life that ended up kind of shaping later events in his life. So I'm sure you're all thinking about Beth stepping in the trap and hurting her leg. That could be a parallel, and I think that it is. But I also think that even her stepping in the trap was a foreshadow of something else. This also connects to Francis, I'm forgetting names today. I always want to say Francis Bacon, and that's not it. The Swamp Fox guy. Okay, so I'll link up my post on this in the caption so you can read it if you want. But this guy, he was a real historical figure. He was actually the guy that Mel Gibson's character from The Patriot was based on. He was the Swamp Fox, and he was a big part of the American Revolution. And there is a story about him where he was in a particular community and he hurt his leg, and so he left town to get it taken care of, and while he was gone the town was attacked, and so when he came back everybody had been slaughtered and he was not there when it happened. And let's just say that Beth has kind of been associated with that story. And then we have this Ignatius story, St. Ignatius, where it doesn't say that everybody was slaughtered, but he still hurt his leg, and it shaped very much who he was and who he became. So I think all of that is something of a hint or a foreshadowing to Beth's arc. We have heard Ignatius from other people. I know Abraham used to say it, good gracious Ignatius, that sort of thing. It's hard to know exactly what they're going for, but I think it has something to do with that, and they are hinting at things. But in terms of the show, anytime we see something that says Ignatius, it also just automatically calls us back to the Grady storyline. St. Ignatius was a hospital. It was a hospital that somebody came from who ended up at Grady and died. But actually, well, he didn't die of natural causes, though. Edwards killed him. So I don't know. You just kind of have to play with it and see if you can figure out things that work. I think it's one of those things that maybe once we get the rest of the story, once she reappears and we have the full structure of the story, it'll make a little bit more sense. Right now, we're kind of grasping at straws because it does feel very much like it's purposeful and symbolic, but it's hard to say exactly which part they're wanting us to notice, if that makes sense. So in some ways, your guess is as good as mine, but I would just look up St. Ignatius and start doing some research on it, and you might find some interesting things. And I will try to find old posts that we did about St. Ignatius and link them up in the post below. Okay, next one. Should Emily be promoting Daryl Dixon if she's going to be in it? Actually, I think I answered this last week. I probably just forgot to delete this because I combined it with another one. And the answer is no. The point is to have her be a surprise. And if she started promoting it, that would be pretty obvious. So she's not going to be promoting it unless it's like being sneaky about it. We're always saying, her album just came out. Or no, I guess it wasn't her album. It was a new music video for one of her songs. And we're getting Beth vibes from that. And she's saying suspicious things. So she can hint at it, but it would have to be in a way that she had plausible deniability and could say, no, that was about my song. That wasn't about that. And that it wouldn't be obvious. So we're not going to see a lot of really obvious promotion from her. I couldn't help but notice on Isabelle and her boyfriend's car was an angel number on the license plate 333. Any idea if the repeating number is significant? I think it's also interesting that there's a 3 in the trunk of the car Bethel hides in after the prison fall. Yeah, I mean, the 3 is really significant. We have the rule of 3s around her a lot. If you don't know what that is, the rule of 3s is something that's used in literature a lot. It's considered what they call a perfect number, and it doesn't even mean perfect. It's kind of what you said, an angel number. It's just a number that we see used biblically, and it's very significant. So it can represent the Holy Trinity. It can represent, in fact, in terms of Beth and resurrection, it's 3 days before Christ was resurrected. So it actually is a resurrection number as well. So yeah, I think the 333 is really significant. I can tell you what I think it means in terms of Isabelle. If you've been paying attention too much about the show or the cast list, you probably have picked up on the fact that Isabelle's boyfriend, Quinn, I think was his name, is going to show up again. In fact, I think that he might show up in this next episode, episode 3. I'm not going to probably end up posting this until after episode 3 drops. So I guess by now you'll know if he shows up in that episode. So the 333 being in the scene where she abandons him at the gas station kind of shows that he's going to come back around and we're going to see him again. So with the 3 being by Beth and Daryl in the trunk, I mean, what does that tell you? Again, it's just more resurrection symbol, more serious symbolism. There's going to be a separation, but then it's going to come back around. So that's what I think that means. Okay, I know you're probably getting a ton of asks about this, but do you think Isabelle will develop feelings for Daryl? I can definitely see how the writers and directors are playing with blocking and such to tease the audience into thinking something might develop or is developing. What are your thoughts on a love triangle situation for Beth, Daryl, and Isabelle? Not crazy about the idea, but I could see them teasing it. Teasing it, sure, because they have teased every other ship under the sun. So sure, they might tease it. Actually happening, I really don't see it. I just feel like they've really gone out of their way to make sure that it's really obvious that there's nothing romantic between him and Isabelle. I mean, they've kind of mirrored scenes between him and Carol from Consumed. And of course, there are certain people, carolers, who will say that that's romantic, but it's been almost 10 years since Consumed and they've never gotten together. So what does that tell you? And I think it'll be less than 10 years before Beth shows up anyway. So I just don't think that there's really anything that's going to happen romantically between Daryl and Isabelle. People tend to think it will only because it's a man and a woman who are both straight together in these scenes. But that doesn't always, TWD should tell us from past relationships that does not always equal romance. It can in some cases, but it isn't always. And I think they've really gone out of their way to show that that's not going to be the case with Daryl and Isabelle. So, you're just asking my opinion. That's my opinion. I think they've given us pretty good evidence that this will remain a platonic relationship. Isabelle is still really devoted to her faith as a nun, and we have not seen anything that suggests she's going to leave it to go start a family. So I just don't think that that's anywhere near what's going to happen right now. That's all. All right, next one. So I'm confused. The episodes have all been seen by reviewers and some carolers, or just journalists. Honestly, with the way the main show did a nosedive so fast, I stopped watching after season 5, and I checked back in to see if there's any mention of Beth from time to time, because the way they wrote her off really effed me up. The dream would be that she's still alive, and I would hope Daryl mentions her at some point, because he hasn't talked about her since Atlanta, and I think that shows how hard it was for him to lose her. Okay, so they sent out what are called screeners. And what that means is that there are certain online journalists who get to watch the episodes and have seen all of them. The thing, and the reason that they do that, just so you understand, is so that they can write their articles in advance. So if you ever wonder how the episode airs and literally 30 seconds later there's 45 articles on the internet about it, it's because those people saw it a few days in advance and wrote up their articles. And that way they can post them right when the episode ends. Okay? So that's why they do that. It's just about the publicity and wanting to make sure that they are the first to get articles out about it and all of that. The thing that's really interesting about this season 1 of the Daryl spinoff is that they were given all 6 episodes and they were sworn to secrecy about episode 5 and 6. They were told they could not talk about or spoil anything in those episodes. We do know a couple of things about them, but they weren't necessarily things that were spoiled by the journalists. We know that episode 5 is where the, name drop that's going to break the internet happens. And we are pretty sure that that's where we're going to see flashbacks to Daryl's childhood. But that's all. That's really all we know about those episodes. Other than that, people are saying episode 5 is the best one of the season. I think it's funny that you say reviewers and some carolers. Sometimes based on the review, it's obvious that the reviewer ships Carol and is not too happy with where the episodes are going. But the other thing is that a lot of carolers, a lot of that ship, I showed you guys the other day asks that were saying things like, I know someone who's seen all the episodes and she doesn't show up and she's not mentioned. Well, I don't know if that's true or not. We won't know until we see the episode, so I couldn't say for sure whether that's true. But I just always have to chuckle when they come back with, I know someone who's watched all the episodes. Well, yeah, I've also known people that told me, I know I talked to somebody who knows, and they say that Beth will come back in season 7, and that didn't happen, did it? I mean, there's always somebody who's going to say that. And the carolers like to say that they have seen the episodes or that they trust someone who has seen the episodes because it furthers their agenda to say that she's not going to show up. But really, that's them being a little bit insecure and trying to convince themselves that it's not going to happen. Because if they haven't seen the episodes, they can't know for sure either. And it's not like the show hands out the screeners specifically to carolers. They hand them out to people who work for them, who are specifically picked to get the screeners and write articles about them. But if that person happens to be a caroler, then it's going to skew what they say a little bit. So it's just something to keep in mind. The other thing is that I did read one of the reviews, and I've mentioned this before, where it said, I don't remember what episode it was. It was either episode 5 or 6. And the person said that was the hardest episode for me to watch. And it was really clear from everything else they'd said that they shipped Daryl and Carol. So just the fact that they said that shows that they're probably... I think it shows that he's going to talk about romance and he very specifically is not going to mention Carol, or maybe it'll even be a step further where he'll talk about Carol because she's one of his best friends back home, and maybe Isabelle will say, oh, well, what is your relationship with her? Is it romantic? And he'll be like, no. So I believe that there is going to be something that is going to piss off the carolers because it's going to be just a confirmation that there's nothing romantic there. So try to take what they say with a grain of salt. I think we're going to get a lot of drama from them, and I don't know what it'll be. It was just something that reviewer said that made me go, huh, okay, interesting, Beyond that, we don't know for sure that there's a mention of Beth. We hope there is one, but we don't know for sure. And because you haven't watched since season 5, it is maybe significant to tell you that Maggie mentioned Beth in season 10, and she was talking to Daryl. Now, Daryl didn't mention her specifically, and we noticed that they very specifically did not show his face when she said Beth's name. And I think that was on purpose because they didn't want to have to show a reaction from him that everyone was going to read into. They weren't quite ready to do that yet. And so they just, the camera was on Maggie and we could only see the back of Daryl's head when she said it. And believe me, we all wish we could have seen his face when she mentioned Beth's name, but they didn't show us that. And I totally agree that not mentioning her is proof of how hard it was for him to lose her. So here's hoping that he finally talks about her again. I am with you on that. All right. I hope that answered what you wanted me to answer. Okay. We are going to wrap up there, and I will be back tomorrow with some more answers.